God bless every person that is hearing this program today. In Jesus' name, you're hearing the program Gain to Know Jesus. And my name is Harris Kakalidis. And in today's program of Gain to Know Jesus, we will continue studying the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 2, verse 23 to 28, we're going to read. Now it happened that he went through the grain fields, and on the Sabbath, and as they went, his disciples began to pluck the heads of grain. And the Pharisees said to him, Look, why do they do what is not lawful on the Sabbath? But he said to them, Have you never read what David did when he was in need and hungry? He and those with him, how he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat, except for the priests, and also gave some to those who were with him. And he said to them, The Sabbath is made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. In today's program, I would like to start with some background information on this passage, like what was the Sabbath? And in the next program, we will look at the oral law, which basically the Pharisees are quoting, and its problem. And in the third program, we will clear some problems which some people have with this text. Then we will ask the question of whether Jesus was keeping the Sabbath or not. And then we will look at this passage and studying it. So let's start with what is the Sabbath. Our calendars end on Saturday, and it begins on Sunday, because Sunday is the first day of the week, which God started his creation, also Jesus Christ resurrected. And Saturday is the seventh day and last day of the week, which God rested from his creation on that day. This Saturday was blessed by the Lord when he had rested and sanctified it. That means he set it apart for a purpose. Let's read. Genesis 2 verse 2-3 says, And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then the Lord blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. Now, though the Lord blessed this day and set it apart, it does not mean that Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob ever kept it. For that day was not observed by the Jews till after their captivity of Egypt. We read in Ezekiel 20:10-12, Therefore I made them go out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness. And I gave them my statutes and showed them my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. Moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between them and me, that they might know that I am the Lord who sanctifies them. Notice the fact that God gave them the Sabbath. It was supposed to be a sign, a symbol between Israel and God. Nehemiah 9, verse 10-14 says, You showed signs and wonders against Pharaoh, against all his servants, and against all the people of his land. For you knew that they acted proudly against them. So you made a name for yourself as it is this day. And you divided the sea before them, so that they went through the midst of the sea on the dry land. And their persecutors you threw into the deep, as a stone into the mighty waters. Moreover, you led them by day with a cloudy pillar, and by night with a pillar of fire, to give them light on the road which they should travel. And you gave them just ordinances and true laws, good statutes and commandments. You made known to them your holy Sabbath, and commanded them precepts, statutes, and laws by the hand of Moses, your servant. Notice that God gave them, He made known to them, He gave them the Sabbath. It was after they came out of Egypt. Because in Egypt, no one could keep a Sabbath if you were a slave. You had to work every single day. They started keeping the Sabbath afterwards. So by these passages alone, we establish the fact that none of the patriarchs, like Adam and Eve and so forth, observed the Sabbath. If you want to know the first time this day was observed by Israel, it was the exact time Israel was fed manna from heaven in their wanderings in the desert. Exodus 16 verse 22-27 says, "And so it was on the sixth day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. Then he said to them, This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake today, and boil what you will boil, and lay up for yourselves all that remains, to be kept until morning." So they laid it up till morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Then eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the fields. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. And if you do a complete study on the scriptures about the Sabbath, you will find out that Israel failed at it every time. Ezekiel 20 verse 13, "Yet the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes. They despised my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And they greatly defiled my Sabbaths. Then I said, I would pour out my fury on them in the wilderness to consume them." If they defiled the Sabbath, they defiled the sign that God had between them and Israel. Ezekiel 20 verse 16, "Because they despise my judgments and did not walk in my statutes, but profaned my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols." Ezekiel 20 verse 24, "Because they had not executed my judgments, but had despised my statutes, profaned my Sabbaths, and their eyes were fixed on their fathers' idols." There was even a yearly Sabbath which Israel never kept. We're not going to talk about that. I just wanted to mention it. The breaking of the Sabbath was considered in the law of Moses as a reason to be stoned. Exodus 31 verse 15, "Work shall be done for 6 days, but the Sabbath is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death." A matter of fact, we see that happening in the book of Numbers. Numbers 15 verse 32 and 36 says, "Now while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron, to all the congregation. They put him under guard, because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, The man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." So as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. Even though by the time of the first century, when Jesus lived among us, Israel was unable to put anyone to death, because that authority was reserved only for the Roman government. John 18:31 says, "Then Pilate said to them, You take him and judge him according to your law. Therefore the Jews said to him, It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. They were allowed to find someone or chance at them, or such Jews that would break that Sabbath, but they weren't able to kill them. Are we at this time called to keep the Sabbath? And the answer is no. Colossians 2 verse 15 and 17 says, having disarmed principalities and powers, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them in it. So let no one judge you in food or in drink, or regarding a festival or new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the substance is of Christ. If the Sabbath is a shadow of what is to come, and the substance is Christ, what does that tell me? That the Sabbath is showing me that someone is coming, but I can't see him that clearly. I don't know if he's white, black, Chinese, Indian. I don't know. I don't know the texture of his skin, because it's shallow, it's dark. I don't know his height. I don't know how his skin feels. I don't know the color of his eyes. But I know something is coming way better. And that is the shadow tells me of something coming. I can see a form, but I don't see it clearly. When that person comes, I can see the person. And that is what the Sabbath is a shadow. In the next program, we'll speak about the oral law and its big problem of making things worse instead of better. And as we go along, we'll talk about, was Jesus required to keep the Sabbath? And the answer is no, Jesus was not required to keep the Sabbath, because if the Sabbath is a sign, once the Messiah comes, that sign is no more in use. We'll talk more about all this in our next program. God bless you, and I'll see you next program of Getting to Know Jesus. Bye. If you enjoy this program, feel free to make a copy and give it to a friend, and that way they will get to know Jesus as well. Bye.